Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Chris Aguilar and I work for the City of Sacramento's Finance Department, specifically in the Procurement Division. This demonstration video will give an overview of our new strategic sourcing module. This module replaces our longtime solution, Planet Bids, which we use to post city bids and have vendors, suppliers bid on and award these bids. The new solution will give us much new functionality and will integrate much better with our current systems. That being said, I want to stress that this video is not a substitution for actual training, nor is it a full feature tutorial. This is more of an overview just to let people know what the process looks like before they go into actual training. That being said, let's go ahead and start the actual demo. Okay, for this demo, we are going to create a simple non-professional services agreement that is going to have one line that the bidders are going to bid on. That's going to be a dollar amount. And we're going to start by going to the sourcing module. We're going to go to event details. Event details are going to offer me the option to either search for a previous event or create a new event. In this case, once the screen comes up, we're going to ask it to create a new event. And to do that, we're going to click New Value. All of this is pretty much default, and this means it'll create a new unique bid or event number. So in the past, we've always had to create these manually. In the future, we will not. The system will do this for us, and simply click Add. Now we're going to start by entering the most basic information here, the name, the description, the start date, the end date. But to do this, we first have to copy in a template called a sourcing template. This sourcing template will be specific to the type of bid or event that we would like to load. In this case, I'm going to go into the options here where there is a template ID, and I'm going to select non-professional services. There it is. Non-professional services is loaded. We're going to search for that, and this will bring up a line, and this line is a line that contains the basic information, the questions, how to build this bid, all into this line. So we're going to select this to continue on. And at this point, it's going to give me the option to create the actual line that the bidder will bid on. And I can create it here, or I can roll back later to some of the options later on in the process and create this line. But in this instance, I'm only going to use one line, and it's really easier to just go ahead and create it right from the start. So I'm going to go ahead and describe this, and I'm just going to call this janitorial services. And for category, this is very important. This is what we use to send out bid notifications, and by default, it's just going to put a default value there, which will almost always be wrong. So to find a better one, we're going to go ahead and search for something close to or matching janitorial services. And we can do that by searching by description and see what we get. There we go, janitorial services. And unit of measure, in this case, we can also search, and there's a long list of these. And we can use whatever is appropriate. Now, for our purposes, I want to use service. I could have also searched that the way I did the other. Quantity, we're going to leave 1 because we're going to put 1 price. Start price and end amount will stay the same. Essentially, this is a floor. They cannot bid less than $1. Waiting we don't use, so we'll leave that alone. And we'll go ahead and save the event changes, which will lock that in. And then we will return to the event overview. The event overview is once again the main screen where we'll do all of our entry. And what this has done is put a little bit of boilerplate here, which we'll overwrite. It did not change the dates. We will make these whatever we want them to be, but we'll go ahead and start by naming our event. And down in this little box, you can actually put a lot more detail. I'm just going to put a little bit of extra text. But you can actually go crazy and you can put quite a bit there, so you're not limited. This will show up on the summary when the bid is posted on our main page. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave the preview date and the start date the same. These should always be the same, and the same for the time. Our end date, by default, it generally puts it about a month ahead, a little bit less it looks like. you can change this to whatever you want. In this instance, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it the same, but maybe I will change the time a little bit. Let's make this 3 p.m. It's going to close, so May 2nd, 2019 at 5 p.m. Okay, now that and at this point, we've completed the process about this bid. We're going to move on to define event basics. Now, this is probably the most involved portion that requires the most effort. So I'm going to take this one by one. We're going to go right through the steps exactly the way you see them: event settings and options, event comments and attachments, the event header bid factors, add an RFX document, payment terms and contracts, and we will not use event constraints. Now we will go ahead and start with this event settings and options. Now this is a lot of information, and during actual training I will explain what all of this means, but for almost every instance on all of this, we only have to worry about two of these items. And the two items are this one, bid required on all lines, and display bid factor best and worst. Now, display bid factor best and worst relates to functionality that we're not going to use. So we always need to untick this and just go ahead and always do that. Now, bid required on all lines is pretty self-explanatory. In my case, I only have one line, so of course I'm going to leave this because I want them to bid on that one line. But if I had multiple lines and I wasn't intending to necessarily award the whole contract at once, perhaps I was going to award on a per line basis, then I would untick this, and that would allow someone bidding on this to bid on, say, 1 out of 3 lines or 1 out of 5 lines, or whatever they chose. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave it. So to reiterate, we're going to untick display factor bid worst, and we are going to decide what bid required on all lines is required for each bid and tick or untick that appropriately. All of this is stuff that we aren't going to use. Associated categories. Now, just a minute ago, you can remember for my line, I said a category that was linked to janitorial services. What that will do is any bidder that has added janitorial services to their bidder account will receive a bid notification based on that janitorial services. But a lot of times, almost every time, we want to broaden our outreach. So we want to add a few related categories to get more bidders. And in this case, I'm going to do that by searching for a category that I think might be related to janitorial services. And when this comes up, I'm going to search by description some words that I think might be related to janitorial services. Carpet cleaning, steam cleaning, and in my view, yes, these might be worth a little bit of outreach, so I'm going to select one and put it there, and I can use the plus and minus sign to add and delete them. And I'm going to go ahead and add that other one that was there. I believe it was steam cleaning. There it is. And I'm going to go ahead and save the event changes. Now, when we post this bid, it's going to use that janitorial services that we created on a line basis. And it's also going to use these two categories to broaden our outreach. So this gets us more bidders and hopefully better bids and hopefully better prices. So we always want to try to use this in a clean and consistent way every time. So we're going to save these event changes. We're going to return to the event overview, and we will now move on to our next step, which is the event comments and attachments. Every bid or event is going to have at least one attachment. The most common attachment, which we're going to use in this instance, is a scope of work, a document that helps the bidder know how they have to respond, how they have to determine their pricing, do they have to upload anything. Basically, it's the detailed instructions on how to send us their pricing and their unique information. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and add an attachment. And I have added the scope of work. This is just a test document that I actually grabbed from another similar bid. And eventually this will come up and it will show in the bottom here. There it is, scope of work. This will show the name of the actual document, but we always need to give it a nice description. In this case, in the actual document, it does say it does need to be called attachment 1 scope of work, so we're going to go ahead and match what's going to actually happen at the end here. Now over here, we've got some options: display to bidder, include on award, include in notifications. By default, it includes the notifications. This actually will attach it to the bid notification, and some people's email doesn't work particularly well with attachments, so we want to untick this and we want to tick display to bidder. What this does is this forces them to basically go to our bid portal where they will be able to see, acknowledge, and look at this particular document. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now we've added that particular document. Now the next portion of our bid is the event header bid factor. What is the event header bid factor? These are actually the questions that the bidders get asked that in our older templates, these are the things that they would sign off or tick or say yes or no. And these are formalized. These were brought in by this template. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. You can see right here, please provide the name and email response of the individual submitting this response. This says display bid factor, which means it will show to the bidder, and this means that it is required that they answer it. Now, if we ticked ideal bid response required, if this were a yes or a no answer, we would be telling them that, oh, you have to give us a specific response, which we do use sometimes. Now, for most intents and purposes, you're not going to probably need to change too many of these, but you're welcome to go through these, and if you don't see one that is applicable, you can go ahead and just say not display it, and it will not show up to the bidder. So I'm not going to go through this now. I will go through this a little bit more in detail with our actual training, but once you've taken a look at all of these, down here at the bottom, you're going to go ahead and just say save event changes and return to event overview. Our next step is one of the more complex steps, which is add an RFX document. Now we have to ask ourselves, what is an RFX document? An RFX document is the equivalent of what we've used in the past as our template, and it's best to think of it as the bid instructions. When the bid is due, how to submit it, is there pre-bid conferences, that sort of information. But before we actually set that up, we have to have the system help us find out the type of template that we want. And we start by selecting the style, which is a sourcing event template. And we leave this event configurator selector. This is going to help us select the right kind of template for this. And then we're going to click the configurator selector, but not before we fill out this information. The administrator is generally the person who is putting in the bid, though this could be different if you'd like it to be. And the same goes for the department or depth ID. In my case, I'm procurement, and I happen to know that this is my depth ID. If I didn't know this, I would be able to search this, and you could go ahead and get the complete list. And you could use whatever is appropriate to you or appropriate to this bid. And once this is filled in, these two fields are the same. We're going to hit the configurator selector, and it's going to ask me a few questions. The first question is going to determine the event configurator for the event creation. Will this contract include the provision of goods without any services? No. This is not a goods contract. Will this contract include the provision of both goods and non-professional services? No. This is strictly a non-professional services agreement. Will this contract include the provision of non-professional services? Yes. So once I did that, this clicks over to finish, and it says configurator ID found. Configurator event non-professional services, press event to finish, which I will do. So now we're ready to create this bid instruction document, which is also called the RFX document. And to do this, we're going to hit create document. And what's going to happen here is we're going to get a series of questions, and there's quite a few of them, about 18, and I'm going to go through these reasonably quickly. But the way you answer these questions will set up the bid document, the actual instructions that are given out to be appropriate for your event. For instance, I'm going to assume that mine is not going to be greater than 100,000. It will take me to the next question. Will this be a request for bid? Am I getting pricing? It sure is. Will a pre-bid meeting? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, just to show how extra information will be required. Will this pre-bid meeting be mandatory? I'm going to say yes, it will. When are we going to hold this event? I'm going to say this event will be held on Monday, and enter the time. The time is generally entered in this format. Enter the location of the pre-bid meeting. In my case, I'm going to say that we're doing this at City Hall. Are there any special instructions for the pre-bid meeting? I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say, please check in at the front desk. Now, of course, these might be different depending upon your particular bid, but you do want to be as complete as possible. What is the date of the last day for the vendors to ask event questions? We will say tomorrow. I'm doing this on the 11th, so we'll say the 12th. What is the time deadline for the last day? What time is the last time are we going to accept questions? I'm going to say this is 3 p.m. What is the day of the week is the last day for the vendors to ask these event questions? I'm going to say Friday. What day of the week is the submission deadline date for this event? I believe, I'm not quite sure when we did it, but I'm just going to say Thursday, so don't hold me to it if that's wrong. You do have to make sure this is correct when you're actually entering this, of course. What is the submission deadline date for this event? We will make it a Thursday. There we go. What is the submission deadline? They have to get these in by 3 p.m. on that day. And I'm just going to step through these as fast as we can. All submissions shall be the portal unless permission has been received, preference, and we're going to assume that this is going to go out to the portal, so we're not waiving that. Will a public bid opening where bidders attend in person to hear bid results be held? We're going to say no. Is bid security? This is always a possibility, but in this case, we're going to say no. Will a performance bond be required? We're also going to say no. Will a payment bond be required? No. Once again, these can be different for your bid. What is the anticipated contract date for this event? I'm going to say, well, let's start at the end of the month. And this is anticipated, so this is pretty much best guess. What is the anticipated number of initial contract terms? I'm going to say we're going to start with one term. And that term is going to be for a year. Now it's asking me here, is this contract going to be a multi-year extension? And I'm going to say yes, because I'm going to say that this is going to be a potential 3-year contract, but it's going to go out every year for renewals. How many anticipated extension years are possible, not including the initial term? Since I said 3 years, that means there are 2 years remaining. What is the anticipated maximum term possible in years, including both the initial term? So that would be 3. We'll go to the next step. Will this contract be funded using federal restricted states? In this case, no. LBE participation is required. Has this been waived? Well, we're going to say no. Would you like to include performance bond? Once again, no. Would you like to include payment bond? No. Will a contractor be shipping goods? No. General liability has standard limit, and risk management must approve non-standard limits. Has risk approved non-standard? By saying no, we're saying that we're using the standard liability insurance here. And this is going to ask similar questions later. Are there any non-city entities required as additional insured? In this case, we're going to say no. We are the only insured with them. Will the contractor or contractor's employees be driving the vehicles to deliver goods and services? I'm going to say yes. For janitorial, that would probably be correct. We're talking about auto liability. Once again, it's setting up the standard. Are we waiving that? We are not waiving that. So we're going to go to the next one. Does this contractor have employees? Yes, they do. Will the services or work be performed on the city facilities or city property? We're going to say yes. Workers' comp has statutory limits. The risk management must approve non-waivers. So if it's different than this, are you waiving it? In this case, we are not. Whoops, I tried to go a little too fast there. Will contractors or contractors' employees have access to secure city properties? I'm going to say yes. Crime liability has a standard. Once again, are we waiving this? We are not. Will the contractor be providing any information technology services? In this case, that's a big no. Will contractor be providing services where there's potential for environmental cleanup? I'm going to say yes. Pollution has a liability of $1 million, and once again, are we waiving that? We are not. Will the contract amount be equal or exceed the 25 and include land surveying? In this case, that's not applicable. Will the contract, okay, actually we're done. We've got to 18 and this is click to finish, and I'm going to go ahead and click finish, and this is going to grind a bit. And what that's doing is it's actually generating our bid instructions for us based on all these questions that we ask. So while this does its thing, we're just going to wait, and hopefully it won't take too long. There we go. This is bringing me to the document management page. This will show me the event ID that has been assigned to this event. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the actual document. To view the document, which is necessary to make sure that it is correct, we're going to use the View Document button. Now, if we do look at this and we decide it's not correct, we can use an option called Refresh Document, which will actually bring us back into those questions that we asked before, and all of our other responses will be the same, and we'll be able to go back in there and change those and update those, and then basically update our document so it can be correct. And to see this, we're going to go ahead and hit View Document, and then we will take a look at the actual document that is generated. Once the View button on the previous page, the document management screen, has been selected, the RFX document or bid instructions will be available for download and viewing via Microsoft Word. It is very important that the person putting in the bid go through this document and make sure that the values that they see and the template and the boilerplate text is correct, because we want to make sure in this case that we've got a non-professional services agreement, we have a unique bid number, we have what we've named this, all the dates, the times, the pre-bid meeting, everything needs to be correct. Now, we need to go through this whole document, and a lot of this is boilerplate that is just pretty much the same, but we do want to check the unique items. We do want to make sure everything is here that we expect to see. And I did want to mention one particular item, which is the scope of contract, which refers to attachment 1 scope of services exhibit. This is the actual scope of work, a document that we attached earlier at the attachment screen because it needs to match up with this. For just about every contract, you're going to need at least one type of attachment similar to this. It might be named a little differently, but in this case, since it's services, it will be the scope of services exhibit. Now we're going to go through the whole document. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it does need to be looked at. And once we decide that everything is good and everything is complete and all the numbers are fine, we're going to move on to the next step. Once the RFX document, the bid instructions, has been fully reviewed and is correct, then it's time to move on to the next step, which involves returning back to the event. Now, before we go back to the event, we have to tell the event that this document is complete, it's ready to go, and we can use it. Right now it's in draft, but we've already looked at it, and we know that it's good, that it's complete. So we're going to use the Complete Document button to tell the system that it's now complete, no longer in draft. At this point, to return to the event summary screen, the easiest way is to go up to this link, which has the number, to click on it. And after we do that, it should take us right back to the screen. And once we see that, what should hopefully happen is we should see that the whole of step 1, Define Event Basics, should now be complete. We've added all of these items, but now instead of adding the RFX document, we have Maintain Document because we have a complete document that is ready to go. At this point, we're ready to move on to step 2. Configure line items allows the user to review line items that have already been added, or add or delete line items. And these are line items that allow the bidder to enter a bid price or upload an attachment, however they are asked to respond to that particular line item. To go into this, we click the line items link, and we will see that I actually have a line here. This is a line I set up a little bit earlier in the process, and that's already been explained. The description, the category, unit of measure, lowest price, no waiting. But what can happen here is lines can additionally be added and or deleted. So if I wanted an additional line, I could hit the plus, say I want to add only one line. I could make this line a little different. but I would probably use a lot of the same basic values here. You know, I still want my start price to be not 11, but actually 1. And there we go. So at this point I could save this and I could use this, but in the interest of keeping this particular test demonstration bit a little bit simpler, I'm going to actually take that back out. And once all the adjustments have been made, in this case it's trying to delete this, we're going to go ahead and save changes and once again return to event overview. So we can consider step 2, configure line items completely done, which takes us to step 3, select bidders to invite. This particular step will use the category that we use for the line plus those additional categories that I entered earlier, and this will allow us to match up with bidders who have selected those categories in our bid portal and send bid notifications specifically out to them. And this is how it works. You start by clicking into bidder invitations. And here it's going to say public event, and we're not going to change anything here, but we are going to search for bidders. Now there is one step. You have to click this little show more button, and there's a tick box that says include not open for ordering. The reason we have to tick this box is there are 2 types of users that can bid. There are people who are suppliers that are actually doing business currently with the city that are in our accounting system, and these are considered suppliers who can also bid. But there are also people who are not suppliers, who are not currently doing business with the city of Sacramento, who are in our portal, who are strictly bidders. If I don't tick this box, include not open for ordering, only the suppliers will be able to bid. But we want everyone who selected those categories, including the strictly bidders, to also have the ability to get a bid notification for these bids. So we will always have to click the show more button, now it says show less, and we will always have to tick this button. Once we've done this, we're going to go down to the recommend bidders screen. And this button will bring up a list, and these are all the bidders and suppliers that match those categories that we previously selected. In this case, you can actually see the difference. The ones that say main, or have this additional information, these are folks who are actually suppliers in our system. These that do not, it will say bidder and differentiate. But the fact that I see both of them means that I'm seeing what I want to see. Now, currently, we're not inviting any of these, and we want to invite all of them. So we're going to go over here and select all. And you always want to select all, because if someone has gone to the effort to say, hey, I want a bid notification here, you should always send them a bid notification. And everything should show up. And once you've done this, we want to return to the invite bidder screen. And what will happen is now that screen will be populated by all these bidders that we recommended. So at this point, we're pretty much done with this part, and we want to save the event changes and return to event overview. At this point, the invite bidders has been completed, and we're going to move on to the next step. Step 4, invite collaborators, is functionality that we're currently not using, but we are exploring the possibilities of its use in the future. But for now, please don't click into or use it because it can cause issues as it's not currently set up. And this actually brings us to step 5, the post event, which is the final step, almost the final step, to getting your bid out there on the street so bidders can actually get their bid notifications and they can see it. Before we do this, we do want to click Save Event to make sure we haven't lost anything that we've previously done. And at this point, we want to post the event. This will say this will submit the event for approval. Once the event has been approved, you will be limited to changes. What's going to be happening here is once we hit OK, it's going to say there is a newly authored RFX or bid instructions document. Do we want to post the latest? This is because I made a few changes in this. It might or might not say this. If it does say this, you do want to say yes. And what has happened here is some text has appeared that tells us that this bid has been submitted for approval. If approved, the event status will change to posted. This is pending post approval. Once this bid has gone through workflow, the bid will flip to approved and posted and will be actually available for people to use. I'm going to go ahead and approve this. Once all workflow approvals have occurred, the bid will flip from pending approval to posted. Now, posted means that the bid is actually there. It's out on the street. Bidders can respond. They can put in their pricing. They can upload if required. They have complete access to the documents that we are providing them for this bid. Now, if workflow approval has happened and the start date has not occurred, then the system will wait until the start date has passed, and then it will flip to that same available status. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this demo up because I just wanted to get everyone to the point where we have a bid out on the street. In our actual training, we will be covering additional steps like adding addendums, which are called versions, closing out the bid, we will be analyzing the bid, and we will getting the bid to the point where we are going to convert it to a contract. And that section, contracts, authored contracts, looking at the spend report for contracts, that is actually a separate training, which will happen in the future, and we already have some of those scheduled. So I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I hope it was useful, and I look forward to seeing everyone in training. Thank you.